Yeah, thanks for inviting me. Lovely to be here. I was asked to talk about innovation beyond design, so I'm going to give it a go. And it's partly related to the work I do at the Royal College of Art, where I head 2 master's programs, both with innovation in the title, one called Global Innovation Design, one called Innovation Design Engineering. So I'm going to give you a little background of my thoughts, but also give you some examples of the work that happens from the students on the courses. But before I do that, I wanted to sort of set the scene why I think this is important. World Economic Forum talked about the top 10 skills back last year. I'm sure they'll publish a new list next year. They do it every 2 years, I believe. And you can look at some of the key skills that workers say that are critical in the future. Do you want me to use this microphone? Yeah, things like analytical thinking, creative thinking, technological literacy. You can have a look at all that list there for yourself, but I think they're very important skills that I think are crucial in innovation in particular. And why do I think that's important? Because we face a lot of challenges in the world, and there's a lot of areas that we need to address that are affecting us globally and then affecting us locally as a consequence. And I believe very strongly that you can't tackle this just purely through one discipline alone. And I think a lot of people agree with me. So, for example, this was a quote back from 2017 in the context of climate action. And they said, "This cannot be addressed without considering the influence of the oceans, rivers, sea ice, atmospheric constituents, solar radiation, transport processes, land use, land cover, and anthropogenic practices and feedback mechanisms that link the system of subsystems across scales of space and time." That puts it in context that if you just look at one small aspect, how can you make a difference? So understanding context and different disciplines and how they need to interact and help each other, to me, are very important. Now, I don't think this is an issue that's not been known for quite a while. I remember hearing a talk maybe 20 years ago talking about we needed people of this T-shape. The Design Council talked about this in the UK in 2010, and they wanted to create designers, I guess, who had that depth of expertise in a particular discipline, but also had this breadth, this horizontal line to collaborate across disciplines and apply knowledge in different fields. So that implies this area of interdisciplinary work. So I wanted to sort of delve into that in a bit more depth and talk particularly about the term transdisciplinary or interdisciplinary innovation, and from my perspective, why it can be very powerful and important to help address those types of issues that I've just highlighted. Now, you often hear these words talked about in different terms, so I wanted to give you a definition to know where we're coming from, of what maybe the differences between multidisciplinary, interdisciplinary, and transdisciplinary. So multidisciplinary is more just when different disciplines cooperate, but their ways of working remain unchanged predominantly. Between interdisciplinary and transdisciplinary, that's much more of a contentious issue, and some people see them as one and the same. But I guess just transdisciplinary is just maybe on more taking that forward a bit more in terms of transcending beyond disciplinary norms. Yeah? And the general feeling that this approach is important and oriented to tackling these complex and real-world challenges that we face. But doing this type of work is not easy because we're trained in a particular discipline, certain language, ways of thinking, ways of working, what we believe is the right way of doing things, how we see the world, assumptions that we make. So there are also, therefore, challenges associated with working in this interdisciplinary or transdisciplinary way. So different cultures, disciplinary cultures and frames of reference, different methods and operational objectives within and between the disciplines, different languages within the disciplines and between the disciplines and more broadly, and the personal challenges related to gaining trust and respect of others working in different disciplines. That's a particular challenge that I've seen. I'm an engineer, and what we call STEM subjects, science, technology, engineering, maths, have often a certain attitude that's not often as open to subjects not in that area and the importance of working with them, to design being one. And so to me, that's an incredibly important aspect we need to change to make a big difference. And whether you call this the creative process, the innovation process, design process, I'm up to talking about that. I think it's a messy one, and it's a complicated one, and I believe it's a non-linear one. And therefore, how do we navigate this space? What approaches do we take? And that's quite different maybe from non-design disciplines are used to working and thinking. And so actually the approach and the way of learning, we talked about learning science a little bit yesterday, is very important in this regard too. So with that context, I just want to give some examples of what we've done, particularly on the master's courses that I've been involved in, just to give you some practical examples of how we try and address this. So I'm going to focus particularly on one of my master's programs called Innovation, Design, Engineering. It's a 2-year master's program run between the Royal College of Art and Imperial College London. It's actually been running 44 years, so I didn't create this. But it was recognized the importance of this interdisciplinary working a very long time ago. And obviously you might know that Imperial College London is very strong in science, technology and engineering. RCA very strong in design, so I think it was a very nice mix of skills. So the students get an MA from the Royal College of Art and an MSc from Imperial College London as an output. So, and the focus is very much innovation, with design engineering being the underlying sort of skill sets to support that. I'm not going to the topic of what exactly innovation is, but we can debate that maybe afterwards if you want. So we call it IDE for short. And I'll just briefly, this is the sort of overall aims of what the students are asked to do. The aim is to create a new type of innovator, one who will be a global leader in the future in the integration of design, engineering, science, and enterprise, and distinctly positioned to tackle the volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous challenges society and the planet face. So the only demand we make of our students is that they make a positive impact in the world, in their projects, but beyond that, they're given quite a broad scope of what to work on and justifying why to work on it. We also get students, from a range of different backgrounds deliberately onto the program. We're very lucky, we get a lot of applicants for the program, so we get, for me, a very important mix from a range of different backgrounds. You see from engineering to the art, from science to what we call wildcards. And predominantly the projects are team-based. There are individual projects throughout the year, but I think some of the key things and the most important skills they learn is how to work in these interdisciplinary teams. So we have 63 students per year, so in both years. I am in that little photograph somewhere. Last month we took them away, these are the second years, we took them away to a farm, which is a very making, creative space just outside London, partly to build that sort of team dynamic and that creative mindset in preparation for their year. So yeah, and also internationally, a huge mix. So it's culturally and discipline-based, big variety. And we split the 2 years into 3 main phases because we get people from such different backgrounds to create that foundational level, coming back to some of those key points I just started with, about the challenges that you face of doing it interdisciplinary, not just in terms of skill levels and bringing that up to some level baseline of understanding, but also understanding how to communicate with each other. So we do a lot of skill building, knowledge and confidence building as well, because if you come in as an anthropologist to do design engineering, we have anthropologists coming in onto the master's course, then they're not necessarily been in that engineering tech world before, but to help them build up that confidence to do that. AI is also playing a very powerful role to help them actually get up to speed much faster these days than it was possible previously. And then towards the end of the first year, the start of the second year, it's a transition time. Because in the first year, it's mainly blocks and modules that we cover to give that skills. Then it's the phase 2 is more a reflection of what matters to them, where do they want to position themselves, about agency and taking action. So we call that consolidation. And that leads to the planning for phase 3, where the students totally set their own project briefs. And part of the challenge is what project to set and how to set it. So they do 2 main projects in the second year, one which is a group-based project and one is an individual project. So that covers the whole of the second year. And we don't follow any specific processes. We talk about a range of different processes in the first year. But I want to talk about, this is a model actually I came up with about 10 years ago, before I joined the RCA. It's called the LCD model, but I think it's still very much a philosophy of what we follow on the IDE program. And so this isn't a process. This, I guess, is a sort of principles and things to think about and strategies to take. It's called the LCD model because it's about listening, connecting, and doing. So it's about activities. But the word be is right in the middle because it's also about the individual and your state of being with which you do those activities. And you can see probably it's non-linear. So let me talk a little bit about the approach. So it has this idea of individual and sort of this idea of approach or activities. But it's not, IDE is not just about a response to a problem. Yeah? It's also about maybe a means of generating questions. This is very important. Working out what to do is usually harder than working out how to do it, in my view. And a big emphasis in IDE is working out what to do. And that comes through using these types of tools to work out what questions you need to ask and where you need to position yourself and why. And that's tough and important. So the approach, if I put it into two parts, the approach part is dynamic, it's non-linear, it's spontaneous, it's iterative, it's transdisciplinary, it's collaborative, and it's very practical. So you can start anywhere. So it's not a human-centered design approach, even though it includes human-centered design. It's not a technological-driven approach that engineering might start with, yet includes technological exploration. So I would say it's very much an experimental approach that is more imaginative in a design space for discovery, first and foremost, but also for validation as you go through the process and need to test the ideas and with rigor. So it's a mixture of the skills from the sciences and the arts in the broader sense, and therefore that learning philosophy includes both those elements in this spontaneous way. But there's also this idea of agency. The students needed to work out individually or as a group how they navigate through that space. There's no set rule of what you need to do when. They need to understand at any point spontaneously what's the right thing to do based on the knowledge that they've gained. So therefore the individual in this is very important, and their state of being with which they approach this is extremely important. So some of the factors that we look for is this sense of purpose, what motivates people, what drives them. If you have a sense of purpose, that maybe gives you that resilience to make your way through this process. If it's something that matters to you, that's meaningful to you. We need people who are fiercely curious, open-minded, empathetic, but also analytical, and people who are open and willing to challenge their own conditioning and assumptions and biases, because they've all predominantly come from a discipline before they've come into this, but also encouraging to challenge the others too, so that they can question things and discover things. And to me, this state of being is absolutely crucial for this transdisciplinary approach. If you don't pay a lot of attention to the individual and their state of being, you will not, just following activities on their own will not be good enough. So that's why we put a huge emphasis on the individual and the team to work forward. The program is a very entrepreneurial program, even though it's not talks about entrepreneurship at all in the program itself. It's just about creating value in the broader sense of the term. But the other nice thing about wrapping around the program is we have a very good support system, both at the Royal College of Art and Imperial College London, for really interesting ideas that might be coming out, to help them take them out and really have an impact in the world. So this is another key element that is integrated very closely into the program. So after their group projects, for example, at the autumn term, if there's really interesting ideas, then either Innovation RCA or Imperial or both work together with those students to help them develop those ideas from a more enterprise perspective, and then might then do startups in one or of those incubator units from the summer onwards, and this is quite common. So I wanted to give you 4 examples, and a lot of the students know that when they apply to IDE, so they actually often of them apply knowing that that's something that they're very interested in doing. And I think that ecosystem to me is incredibly powerful. So even though I talk about the master's program itself, that broader ecosystem to me is very special. So I'm going to give you 4 examples with videos just showing each of these are group projects from the second year, and all of them went on to win national awards. And have quite sort of significant impact, or starting to have significant impact, put them on different stages of development. So the first one is called the Tire Collective, and you can see the students here, part of this, and this was from 2020, so just at the end of lockdown, or beginning of lockdown actually, I think, when it happened, and they won the James Dyson sort of National Award for their project. This project was looking, as you can see, at tire wear, and a lot of pollution now is created, and actually be more of an issue with EV cars, actually, because they're heavier cars. You get tire wear pollution, and the particles are pretty bad for us. So they recognized this as an area that they wanted to address, because obviously the air that we breathe, as they say, is pretty important. So that was their area where they found where they wanted to position themselves as part of that project. So, as I mentioned, this was a group that came out and then did a startup as a consequence of that. Their mixture, you'll see the mixture of different skills. So product design, architecture, strategy, mechanical engineering, and kinesiology and biology, all from quite different cultural backgrounds as well. And so, yeah, they only had 3 months to work on this project in the autumn term. And so it's very much taking often the philosophy of that design creative approach rather than a classic engineering approach, but bringing in engineering skills within that sort of experimental discovery process. So you can see a lot of sort of tools and different experiments they do to see what might be possible. So they electrically charged the particles so that they would make their way from the surface of the tire and be collected at the back of the tire in situation. So you can see then that they took that from initial prototypes to how that could be fitted onto the back of the vehicles. And I think they could collect about 80% or maybe more of particles directly off the tire through the experiments that they did. And of course, the sort of this would have a massive impact on the waste streams if it's implemented. So they've raised quite a lot of funding, almost £1 million, I think, since they started in 2020. And they've been developing this sort of project and doing a lot of pilot tests, I think in Netherlands, actually. I don't know if you, at the moment, they're doing a big trial. So yeah, really interesting project from that period of time. Another one actually just completed from last year. This is called Pulpatronics. Let me play it.
Pulpatronics unlocks a more sustainable RFID technology with our metal-free and chipless RFID tags. RFID technology stands for radio frequency identification. It basically uses radio frequency to identify products really efficiently. So it's used in supply chain for inventory management, anti-theft detection, as well as technology that enables auto checkout.
One of our core values is subtraction, and this is the idea that we generate value by removing rather than adding to an already existing system. And this is how we came up with our very minimalistic, streamlined RFID tags. And the way we achieve that is through our bespoke paper substrate that we then hit with very specific laser beam, which allows for us to induce conductive carbon-based tracks on our paper substrate, forming RFID antennas, which then store the information, allowing for item tracking and inventory management.
We know that our laser technology can work with paper, it can work with cork, it can work with cotton, and even potentially plant-based bioplastics.
Chloe and I met during our Master's Innovation Design Engineering at the Royal College of Art, and the project came out of one of our final year group projects, which was basically a self-briefed project.
When I first realized that I was contributing to e-waste by throwing these clothing price tags into landfill, I felt really guilty. And so we basically started Pulpatronics to help reduce unnecessary e-waste from going into landfill. We're very excited that there are sustainable initiatives like this out there, and we really hope that Terra Carta can continue to support us. It's a really good technology, but no one realizes what enables that to happen. It's all unseen. And so I think we're really trying to get people to be more aware of unseen electronics or unseen waste or unnecessary e-waste. And I think that we're trying to do that with Pulpatronics.
So I should say they mentioned Terracotta there. That's another sort of funding initiative for projects that are coming out of the RCA in particular, which was set up by Johnny Ivan and now King Charles. So that was another very important initiative to give them funding to develop their ideas. So this was Polytronics. They won a lot of international awards for this project. But to me, the beauty of that was, taking away electronic waste inside the tag. So it was just simply from the card itself. I thought it was pretty clever, personally. And the last one, this is actually a project from this academic year, just finished. So 4 students on their group project, and this is called Pyri. And again, they are part of the Terracotta finals.
I'm Richard Alexandri, and I studied at the Imperial College of London, the Royal College of Art. Our inspiration started when we realized that by the end of the century, wildfires are going to increase by 50%, mostly in regions like the tropical forest and Arctic Circle. The big problem with that implementing the current technology is going to be just too expensive. My team was composed of Blake Goodwin, he has a background in engineering, Karina Gunadi also has a background in engineering and product development, and Tang Hao Yu, who has a background in industrial design. Working together, actually, we formed a very strong team. Our innovation is called Pyri. We are a nature-based early wildfire detection system. The way that we designed Pyri was to cover vast and remote areas. By using, for example, firefighter helicopters that already exist, we can scatter this through forests. And then when a wildfire starts, the heat activates the power source that sends signals to communication towers already available in the region. And then we tell the authorities so they can act before the fire becomes uncontrollable. When we designed Pyri, we actually worked with the concept of organic electronics that are not harmful to nature. Looking at the shape, we were pretty much being inspired by nature. For example, how the seeds of a pine cone works. The critical challenge was to be robust enough, but at the same time it should blend with nature. It shouldn't be like a human intervention. Winning the James Dyson Award just makes us very happy to see that we create something meaningful. By winning the award, the first point that's going to help us is actually exploring the manufacturing processes and how we can use the new materials that we designed for Pyri. The impact that we're gonna see is like actually taking us out of this horrific cycle of devastation that we are living in and avoiding all these wildfires impacts that we have in different communities.
So they won the James Dyson Award in the UK this year for their project. So these are not just concepts, these are actually fully developed also from a technical study perspective, just to make that clear. And you could also see a little bit of the ID studio there in the video, where they're based. And then the last one, this is from 10 years ago. And the reason I want to show a mixture of projects as well is also the breadth. So some often are driven by material exploration, some are driven by more signal processing, perhaps from technical perspective. So we encourage a range of different approaches based on, and this particularly interesting project, because this didn't come out directly of a project that they were doing formally. They did it as a side project. And interestingly, the general topic is sometimes the side projects are more interesting than the real project. So also then creating an environment where we would encourage that to happen. So NOPLA has been the most successful, but partly maybe it's been going the longest, been going for 10 years. So actually 2 weeks ago, they raised $25 million for their startup, NOPLA. And let me play so you can see what that's about. huge amount of interest from large takeaway food manufacturers and going from strength to strength. But it's interesting for me that initially, because they were sort of techie people to a large extent, that they tried to sort of make all their machines initially themselves and realized actually it was not the right way. So they started even then collaborating with actually sausage manufacturers and other companies who had actually already the skills to do these types of things and other types of manufacturing to create this. So again, it worked, that interdisciplinary collaboration worked beyond the actual course itself and continues to do so. But the nice thing is these people also come back and share their knowledge with the students. So the alumni network is very powerful. So Rodrigo, for example, 2 weeks ago was back in helping our students with their next level of projects. So I think that's also a very important element. So with that, maybe we've got time for a few questions if you want to ask me anything. Any questions people want to? Yeah. With the fire?
I didn't understand how it works.
Yeah, partly deliberately, because I guess that's the area that is they're patenting. So the mechanism to trigger the radio signal to send out from that device is their key technical innovation in it. So I probably can't tell you exactly how they did it, unfortunately. But yeah, so that was their inventive step, I suppose, within. So this concept exists, you know, you can see it. I've seen these concepts, these principles before, but their particular element is how they did that particular aspect while keeping it biodegradable as much as they can, yeah.
During this, which technology did they use? Do you know the technology?
I do, but I can't tell you, unfortunately. Yeah. Sorry about that, but that's their key bit, as it were. Yeah, yeah. There was a microphone coming round.
Well, thank you so much for sharing those wonderful ideas, and thank you so much for the wonderful presentation. You mentioned in your curricula on your phase 1, you build confidence and you use AI for that. I was just wondering if maybe later on you could share some insights with me, because I'm really interested to see, you know, I'm doing research on not AI, the threat, but how useful and how can we implement it to help all of the stakeholders in the process. Thank you.
Yeah, it's a good question. Maybe to clarify. I mean, we do teach them some basic AI stuff, but that's still limited. That's an area I think we're going to expand on in the coming year or so. But what I would say is they use AI rather than we teach them. So for example, anthropologist student who just graduated did a beautiful individual project this year, which was actually quite a technical project. And the reason he could do that is he used AI to generate all the code for him. And he had fully working prototypes. He would never have been able to do that 2 years ago. So it transformed what he was capable of doing as an anthropologist. And it sort of blew his mind as well. And you know, we talk it through, and yeah, fully working prototypes. So I think AI can enable people who were previously excluded, perhaps, from being involved in this to be more involved. Yeah.
Sorry, just to add, do you see this as a threat for innovation? Because the topic was innovation.
Yeah.
How do you, just in your experience, how do you...
Okay, well, I made a caveat here. I come from the world of AI. That's where I started. So I'm going to be biased in my view, inevitably. Yeah, obviously it's somewhat frightening, but incredibly empowering at the same time. And I think this sense of agency, so I think it's going to change the whole way people learn. And if people now take agency and engage with it, they can learn so fast. And so we encourage our students to take that approach, maximize it. And they generally have that attitude anyway, so I don't think it requires much convincing. So I think will be a tremendous speed inducer to innovation, to development of ideas, hopefully for the good. But yeah, I think that's certainly how our students use it, and they're using it already hugely in the last 2 years. It's just everywhere and everything. Yeah.
Gareth, thank you so much again. I suppose your course is heavily overbooked.
Yeah.
So how does how can you imagine the selection process? How do you
Good question.
check all the people who want to apply in regards to your graph you showed?
Yeah, we get about 10 applicants to one place, just as a rough guide. So we're very fortunate. We do not manage it in terms of trying to create a specific type of mix of people, but because I think we're lucky enough that we, in all our open days and all our ways, we encourage that diversity, so we naturally get that. So actually the main thing that we look for is that individual characteristics that I talked about on that slide. So that fiercely curious, experimental, in their own way. That could be an engineer, that could be an anthropologist, that could be a designer. But also that open to working across, and the motivation. So a lot of our students don't come straight from the undergraduate, from bachelor's. They've worked for a few years, typically. Some do, but typically, and usually when you ask them, why did you come back to IDE? They say, I can't just work in a single discipline. I've realized that's just not good enough. It's not what I need to do to make a difference. So that's a key driver often that we hear for people coming back. But yeah, it's more that mindset than any particular skill. I mean, obviously we look at portfolios and things like that, but yeah, we might have a talented, let's say, engineer, but if it doesn't have that mindset, they won't get an offer. Yeah. So it's one at the back.
Yeah, thanks so much for showing these amazing end results. As we're talking about design education, I would be interested in what do you feed into these transdisciplinary teams in the first place? So is it that you're saying we're talking about fires, or is it them coming up with it? That's question one. And question two, who is actually driving the ideation process on what to focus on? Is it the designers? Is it who is it in the teams?
Good question. No, they totally choose what to work on. And IDE is also sort of famous for sort of the design of anything, anything. They often call it the design of everything rather than design engineering, because it is totally open. On one level, that is fearful. That can create some fear amongst the students when they're given so much freedom to work on within the context of just doing a positive thing in the world. And that's hard. And I'm not saying we've fully fixed that, to be honest. We probably need to do a little bit more in the first year about, we do it, obviously, but in terms of how to discover and how to find stuff. So we do quite a lot of curriculum around that, but I think that's still an area probably we need to do a little bit more on. But yeah, in the second year, to me, it's almost all on the students. We're there as guides and we give a lot of support and tutorial support. And obviously we do some lectures in terms of principles and ideas and ways of working. We also have a tutor who's purely a coach for teams and meets them weekly on just team dynamics and things like that. So we have a mixture of support mechanisms. But yeah, it's very much on the students to find their way. And it's not easy and they find it hard and they have ups and downs, but by putting that on them and them going through that, not necessarily in an easy way, at the end of it, they learn a huge amount. And then hopefully they gain the confidence, coming back to what the aims of it is that when they leave, we want them to be leaders of this thing. And so they should have the confidence to take on anything. And then know they can pull a team together to make that happen. And so going through those things directly without too much guidance, and they have to navigate in that nonlinear, dynamic way how to move through it, I think that's a great learning experience for them. When they reflect, maybe not at the time, if you ask them, they might find it tough, but on reflection, yeah. Hi, Annette.
You're afraid we could ask you about innovations. I'll do that.
Yeah.
I'd love to hear how do you understand innovation? What is the value of it? And how has it changed over the course of the years?
We were talking a little bit, actually, over breakfast on this topic, and Rennie said, it's more an outcome. I think that's probably right. I actually see that. I agree with that. So, yeah, I would say it's something new of value that has an impact in society. So, yeah, my title is Professor of Creativity. I think it's more of a creative process. That's why I maybe touched on it a little bit there in the slides, rather than an innovation process. So innovation probably is more, for me, the outcome. And I'd say that's probably more the classical definition that you'd see of innovation, making something successful and impactful in the world. That's different from what currently exists and has value, yeah. So, if there's no more questions, shall I take on to what I'm going to pass on to you? And I've got 2 exercises. Maybe I'll explain them both first, and then we'll probably do about 30 minutes for each. So, the first exercise in your groups, I put the word blank sheet. People might not know what blank sheet is. A fresh start, yeah? If you're doing something totally without worrying about systems or politics or structures, if you could just do what you wanted to do to make a new university innovation program, whether that be a master's level or you might want to choose it at a bachelor's level. It might have design as core to that, but it doesn't have to. That's, maybe as a team you can discuss this. But if you wanted to create that, what sort of structure would you put in place? Why is that structure as it is? And who would be involved? Both perhaps types of staff, but also students. Who would you target this at? So that's your first exercise, just to have a debate, hopefully, about some of these issues, and maybe just gives you a vehicle with which to do that. So that's the first exercise. So this is the ideal case, yeah? Don't worry about anything. But then the set exercise will be, once you've created that, what we see as the potential barriers that might be difficult to make that happen. And then maybe after that, therefore, what are the first steps you could take to overcome those barriers? Yeah? Does that make sense? Okay. Easy challenge, difficult answer. So lots of good discussions, I think I could hear on the different tables. Can we take it in turns? There was another mic around somewhere. Renee? Maybe this group can go first then. Who wants to explain? Everybody come on through and have a listen. Over to you. 2 minutes.
Okay, 2 minutes. Guys, we completely going to disrupt the European educational system, don't we? We do. So, just to cut it really short, there's all these bachelor programs. We're not going to talk about those, but we're going to look into what's before them, and we create a so-called Bauhaus 4 course on personality. Tanya is going to explain it. And we're going to create an MA of policy design. More on that, Tanya.
Thank you so much. Obviously, this was a team effort, so it's just us two presenting. So we have 2 ideas. We want to kind of reinstall creativity because we believe creativity has been lost in the first 18 years of your life. How do we do that? We have a 1-year chaos design course targeting personal growth, confidence, reboosting creativity, kind of erase your hard drive, get new stuff in there, and focusing on the what and not the how, you know, from your very nice invitation, with the target to have new confidence to see where are you going to do your bachelor's and kind of reboost. With the main idea, non-tangible artifacts. I think we have to go beyond the artifact and kind of see knowledge as an artifact, a process as an artifact. And this is the bridge to our other idea, which is a master's program. We have the working title policy design, and we are aware it's not sexy. Okay, so policy design is something where you're in a government and there's a small window and you get a small paycheck. That's not what we mean. We mean design as a system thinker. We want you to solve society problems, policy making, and yes, you have to know politics. You have to understand what's going to happen in the next 10 years if you want to have an impact on the world. One rule, sustainability is not allowed as a word, okay, in the whole program. If you do that, you're going to get punished. We're going to focus on future services and scenarios and leadership with the same thing. Artifacts can be intangible. Thank you.
Thank you. Well done. Very good.
And we call ourselves the School of Eureka.
Very good. Thank you. We'll come to other stuff. So maybe this group wants to go next. Annette, are you taking charge? No? Who's taking charge? You've got the notes. Take the microphone and Christoph.
I think we're the meandering conversation group. Have you been in one of those? Yeah, we've all been in that, right? Where everybody says something really interesting, but you don't actually get to to a result. I think what's interesting is we actually talked about a lot of the same topics, kind of that at the one hand, having that aspiration for creating a space for unbounded creativity, for really being able to imagine wildly creatively, but also the conversation sort of started with, well, we need policy making and understanding of law and an understanding of business. So I don't think we figured out how to quite bridge the two, but that was a really big part of the conversation. The second one was social innovation. How do we make sure that the social aspect is at the very core of the program from the very start? And again, very meandering conversation. We at one point landed with a question of, could it be trade schools, Berufsschule, where these kind of programs are anchored? We tend to think of them at the university level. What if we were to think of the other 46% of the German population that don't go to university and think about the innovation potential there? But again, those were more questions that we explored rather than answers that we can give you at this moment.
It's okay. Thanks very much. And I know you had a lot of talk about the different... Go on, Christoph.
Now come the problems.
All right, yeah.
So suggesting that we would create a social innovation master, SIM. We had, of course, our mixed teams of students and teachers or professors. The barriers were, since a social innovation master is not as cool regarded in society as maybe a technical innovation master program like it here at Royal College and Imperial and at TUM here in Munich, we would have a budget problem because money wouldn't flow in as easily, and a social acceptance challenge. So since there is a huge pressure on the social systems, we would have to address for the budget health insurance companies and health companies in general. And acceptance, here we have the designers coming in, because they would have to design respect and value for that program of the SIM, the Social Innovation Master. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Interestingly, we had this debate a week or so ago within our program. We got some speakers in to talk about social innovation or activism in these types of topics and the unheard, as it were, in society and how to support that. And there's a big organization called The Undaunted, which one of the speakers came in to talk about. And his attitude is very much, you've just got to think big and engage with philanthropists and so on and get big money in to make these things happen. So, his attitude is, we need to think different ways and different types of money that need to drive these types of projects. So just a thought, Okay, thank you. And over on to this group.
Yeah, so our group flipped around the task a little bit, and we started with the last question, which was, what's the first step to take? Because we felt like the really important first step would be to establish a new culture. So we started by defining some cultural principles, which is all about creating a safe space where people work on eye level, they really trust each other, there is a lot of diversity, open, critical discussion, and just that sense of learning together. From that, we can maybe see here, we had a lot of discussion about potential structures. We kind of agreed that whatever we do, it has to come in this circle. So we start by maybe an introduction period, but after that we want to bring students in a continuous cycle between exchange, change and reflection, because we want to train them to be really comfortable with that change and just continuing in that. And there can be a lot of things that then go into this loop. So in the beginning, maybe it's all about changing your behavior and fitting into that culture, but later on it could become problem-based project work. Lots of soft skills and competencies that you will learn throughout this circle. And then we talked a little bit about the people that we want to have involved. And I think the commonality between all our discussions was diversity. We want to have academics, non-academics, people of different age groups, experts from the field. So we want to bring that all in. And that already leads us to the barriers, which we also, similar to what you shared, we identified the differences of people in terms of language, culture, all that. So which again brings us to step number 1, which is just having a really good culture where we can overcome this biggest barrier that we defined.
Thank you. Well done. Very good. And the final group with the upside down chair. Who's going to take that one?
Yeah, this upside down chair is actually a really strong image. One of my professors taught me in my first semester, because we had to actually change an old chair to a new one or just build a completely new chair. And the first thing he did with my chair was he just grabbed it and flipped it around and put it on a table. And that's all about this changing perspective, changing perception and changing a reality in the first step, I think.
So our main idea was that we want to start early and kind of do it very differently to what you have presented, where you pick people who already bring a lot, right? Both in their expertise, but also from their character. You talked about you pick people who are, for example, fiercely curious. We thought about the idea of getting young people in where we can't tell yet if they are fiercely curious, but we believe that we can make them fiercely curious, for example. And we discussed a lot how we could do this. And there were things like it should be really playful, experiential. We even went so far that we said the foundation phase, where it should be a really safe space. They're all gathering around a sofa or on the sofa, so it should be really comfortable. And they can try out different things, and it's all about changing perception. Where later on in the consolidation phase, it's mainly about finding their own purpose and giving them direction of where they want to develop into. It's a little bit about confidence building, effective communications, entrepreneurship. We start to involve industry for finding the right challenges. And then in the mastery phase, they should really find issues they want to experiment with. And there we would prompt them to look at really local, small issues. So here, I think we have it here in the beginning already, we were talking about success confettis. So we want them to have small successes to also stay motivated and learn from that. Do you want to talk about educators and learners?
Yeah, I think you really need a really special kind of people who are really inspiring, who actually are able to change your perspective on reality. So that's something psychologists have, or if someone is really transdisciplinary and craftsman. And in this first phase, I think it's really important to just try things, just to build physical models and really have a lot of success confetti. This helps the character building, and then you can really, in the second year, just push the people in the this consolidation phase, where the reality hits hard, and you can really try all the stuff you learned from the first year in the real context, and find in the third phase then your expertise in this mastery phase. So there are a lot of barriers actually, because in Germany you have the feeling that design is more perceived as styling. So that's something you have to overcome. And for this, we actually had this idea that students can be evangelists who can promote design into the industry, into the decision makers. And this is something I think which is really helping to find money and funding for something like changing perspective design bachelor degree.
Thank you, well done. I mean, just to summarize, I would just say that it's interesting that all of you talked about actually a new way of learning and key elements that need to be part in that way of learning. And I didn't talk directly in my slides about the importance of play, but that's definitely a core part that I think that needs to be there. Because it's a key element of learning, and then things like that associated with that are safety and protection to be able to do that, because you can't play unless you feel safe. So creating those types of environments to me are extremely important, learning environments to help develop all the different ideas. So yeah, I give you a tough task in the space of 1 hour, but yeah, 50 minutes. So, but well done, some wonderful ideas and hopefully thought-provoking elements that you can bring on subsequently for the rest of the day. So yeah, look forward to that. Thank you.